The moment Princess Leonor reportedly revealed what she actually plans to study at Carlos III University, the reaction inside royal circles was not what people expected. Because this wasn't just about picking a subject. This felt personal. And honestly, the detail that grabbed me wasn't the degree itself, it was the silence that came after it. That strange pause from palace commentators. Almost like people suddenly realized Leonor might be preparing for something much bigger than ceremonial royalty. Because when future queens choose what they study, they're also choosing how they want to rule. And I don't think enough people are paying attention to that. While Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, continue representing that classic royal image in Britain, polished, traditional, extremely controlled, Princess Leonor suddenly looks like she's building something more modern. More strategic, almost like a startup version of monarchy. And weirdly, it reminds me of how Mr. Beast approaches audience trust. Not by looking untouchable, but by making people feel involved in the journey. That's what makes this university story dangerous for the old royal system. Because Leonor is starting to look less like a protected princess, and more like a future leader trying to understand the real world before inheriting it. Now here's where things get interesting. According to growing speculation around Carlos III University, Leonor's academic direction appears connected to politics, economics, international relations, and institutional strategy, subjects that sound incredibly serious for someone whose public image is usually reduced to military uniforms and carefully staged palace appearances. And honestly, I think that contrast is intentional. Because the palace knows something most people don't. Ceremony alone is no longer enough to sustain a monarchy in 2026. You need competence now. You need credibility. You need younger audiences to believe you understand the world they live in. And I think Leonor understands that pressure better than people realize. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because what fascinates me here is not just what she may study. It's why the palace suddenly wants the public to know about it now. That timing matters a lot. And here's my hot take. I don't think this reveal is purely educational. I think it's reputational. Spain's monarchy has spent years trying to carefully reshape Leonor's image from royal daughter into future head of state. And university is the perfect transition point because it makes her appear ambitious without looking power-hungry. That balance is extremely difficult, especially for women in monarchy. Too soft. Critics say you're symbolic. Too serious. Critics say you're cold. Leonor has to somehow look intelligent, disciplined, relatable, and emotionally approachable at the same time. That's almost impossible. And honestly, I think people underestimate how psychologically exhausting that must be. Because imagine this for a second. Most students choose degrees based on career goals, money, family expectations, or personal interests. Leonor, her degree choice becomes international analysis. Every subject becomes symbolism. If she studies politics, people say she's preparing for power. If she studies economics, people say the monarchy is worried about instability. If she studies law, people start discussing constitutional influence. Even her homework becomes public narrative. That's insane pressure for someone her age. And yet, there's something undeniably smart about this move. Because Carlos III University itself sends a message. Not flashy, not elitist, not trapped in old royal traditions. It communicates seriousness. And I think that's deliberate. Honestly, this reminds me of a larger shift happening across Europe right now. Younger royals are quietly abandoning the untouchable perfection model. They've seen what happened when institutions became too disconnected from ordinary people. Audiences stopped emotionally investing in them. That's why modern public figures, even outside royalty, now prioritize relatability over mystique. You see it everywhere. Creators show behind-the-scenes footage. Celebrities admit vulnerability. Athletes post unfiltered moments. People trust transparency more than perfection now. And Leonor seems to understand that instinctively. But here's the hidden problem nobody talks about. The more normal Leonor tries to appear, the less normal her actual life becomes. Because a public university environment creates unpredictability the palace cannot fully control. Think about it. Classmates filming her secretly. Conversations leaking online. People analyzing who she sits beside in lectures. TikTok body language experts turning ordinary interactions into conspiracy theories. That environment can become emotionally suffocating very quickly. And honestly, I sometimes wonder if royal advisors privately fear this entire experiment. Because monarchy survives through image management. Universities are chaos. And chaos produces reality. That's the risk. But maybe Leonor wants that risk. Maybe she's tired of only experiencing Spain through palace windows, military ceremonies, and carefully scripted appearances. Maybe studying subjects connected to governance and public systems is her way of grounding herself before the crown becomes permanent. And if that's true, it's actually one of the most intelligent things she could do. Because here's something I've noticed. The strongest public figures today usually understand ordinary people before they fully enter power, not after. That applies to politics, entertainment, business, even YouTube creators. The people who survive long-term are usually the ones who understand audience emotion early. Leonor studying serious institutional subjects at a public university could quietly reshape how Spaniards perceive her for the next 30 years. That's not exaggeration. That's branding psychology. And honestly, I think the palace knows this. Which is why this story feels carefully released rather than accidentally leaked. Notice how the conversation isn't focused on privilege anymore. It's focused on preparation. That's a massive shift. Instead of asking, why does Spain still have a monarchy? People begin asking, could Leonor actually become good at this? That's a completely different public conversation. And that change matters more than almost any royal photo opportunity. But there's another side to this story I can't stop thinking about. What happens if Leonor becomes too relatable? Seriously, that sounds ridiculous at first, but think deeper. Monarchies rely on a strange balance between closeness and mystique. If the public sees royals as completely ordinary, the symbolic power weakens. So Leonor has to walk an impossible line. Human, but still iconic. Accessible, but still elevated. Intelligent, but not intimidating. That balancing act destroys people emotionally sometimes. And I genuinely think younger royals today are under more psychological pressure than older generations ever experienced. Because now the audience never turns off. Social media follows you everywhere. One facial expression becomes a viral debate. One awkward interaction becomes 10 million views. And Leonor is stepping into university life knowing all of that. That takes courage, or maybe exhaustion. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference with royals. And honestly, one thing keeps standing out to me. Leonor rarely looks rebellious in the dramatic way tabloids want. She looks strategically independent. That's different. She doesn't seem interested in destroying tradition. She seems interested in updating it carefully enough that younger generations still care about it 20 years from now. And maybe that's why her academic choice suddenly matters so much. Because subjects shape worldview. Worldview shapes leadership. Leadership shapes institutions. So when Leonor reportedly reveals what she plans to study, people aren't just hearing about university classes. They're hearing clues about the kind of queen she may eventually become. And honestly, I think Spain is watching more closely than the palace expected. Because for the first time in a long time, Leonor doesn't just look like the future of the monarchy. She looks like someone actively preparing for it. And in 2026, that distinction changes everything.